We want to take a look at some wireless issues, but we want to begin at the beginning, which is layer 1. Stay tuned right here on IT Pro TV.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
All right, we are taking a look into wireless LANs, and we are going to begin at layer 1 because if nothing else, right, we need a good foundation for what is going to be happening. And here, of course, help us understand that, Anthony Sequeira. All right, Anthony, like everything else that I've started to make sure that it's gotten into my path of thinking here is to always start with the most basic things. Layer 1, if I don't have that, I don't have anything.
Absolutely.
So wireless is kind of one of those issues that we really want to begin there, right?
Yeah, and for me, it still feels like a little new, right? I've dealt with copper and fiber for so long, and now we get into radio frequencies. In fact, that's the song of the episode. What's the frequency, Kenneth? Remember that song from REM?
I do, now that you sing that. Yes, I do.
Okay,
yes.
All right. I'm a REM nerd. So, yes, we're going to look at what's the frequency, Kenneth, in this episode. And a lot of this is really straightforward. So, embrace it. If wireless is never interest you, now's the time to at least get interested in it a bit, because it is most definitely a major section for those of you that are interested in the Encore exam. So, two main bands, Ronnie, the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz. The biggest difference between these two bands used for Wi-Fi is channels. Right? So we have to really be careful when we're operating in the 2.4 gigahertz band because there are overlapping channels. So we need to make sure that we are setting our APs. If we need multiple APs in an enterprise network for full Wi-Fi coverage, we need to make sure they're on non-overlapping channels. Ronnie, do you remember the 3 non-overlapping channels? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yes, I do. There's channel 1, 6, and 11.
1, 6, and 11. Even I know that. Like, it gets burned into your brain that those are the non-overlapping channels in the 2.4 gigahertz band. Know that, please. In the 5 gigahertz band, we don't have channels that overlap. Bonus! So I would know that fact as well. Now, when we talk frequency, we are dealing with a spectrum of the radio frequency here that is not just exclusive to Wi-Fi devices. So we need to know what can cause interference. Notice that this spectrum shares its functionality with microwaves and with radar. So right away, when it comes to interference, those are two big ones. When I was researching this topic, Ronnie, I ran across this poor dude that his house is located right where there's a ton of weather radar stuff going on.
Right.
And this guy had to go through all this crazy stuff so he could get his Wi-Fi to work. My famous story about this, famous to me, is the microwave oven.
Right.
So I was teaching online in the early, when was it? It was in the early 2000s. I guess I'm thinking it was like around I don't know the exact date, but it was a while ago. And I was in my father's house and I was teaching online, and it was 802.11b.
Right.
That I was using throughout the house. I installed it in my dad's house. He was like, what's that robot thing in the corner with the lights? He's never going to get on Wi-Fi ever. And so I'm like, Dad, the house is all wireless now. He didn't get that. But oh my gosh, I had to put a physical sign on the microwave when I was teaching my online classes. Because anytime someone used that microwave, the Wi-Fi in the house, gone. So that is a challenge. And of course, we don't see that much anymore because the devices like baby monitors, those are now constructed in a way where they are intentionally not interfering with these bands. But I would know this list as the classic sources of interference, cordless phones.
Right.
We don't really have those anymore, but even though they are still manufactured and sold, but even those are being manufactured in a way so hopefully they won't interfere with our Wi-Fi. Now, I did list neighbors here.
Right.
That's a huge one. So, you see this a lot with small home offices, where their office is in this very crowded building of all these people leasing individual office spaces, and they might all be in the 2.4 gigahertz band, and there's just all kinds of interference because of the density of all those different SSIDs. The 5 gigahertz band oftentimes is a great solution in that scenario, but please keep in mind those common interference components.
Yeah. Now, in this particular instance here with the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, people might be wondering why this is, and that's because the FCC, at least here in the United States, they've actually designated these for essentially commercial use. So this is part of what they call the ISM, the Industrial, Scientific, and Medical channels. And that means anybody can build products and it's not needing to be licensed by the FCC. So that's why you find a lot of interference. Where I actually have encountered the neighbor instance here is normally in apartment buildings.
Yes.
So what happens? People buy wireless access points from some type of retail store, and they just put them up, and then their neighbor's Wi-Fi, they went and bought the same exact one. And so in that little quad of apartment complexes, you have 4 Wi-Fi access points that are named exactly the same. They're running the exact same frequency. They're on the exact same channel. And they keep wondering why they get bumped off of one and connecting to another. And then somebody changes the password and they no longer can get access to their own. And they're not exactly sure what's happened.
Yep.
So it's kind of amazing that we have to worry about the ideas of interference. But unlike the bounded, fiber optics or copper, right? This is probably one of the main issues that we have to worry about. Distance is also included in here.
Sure.
But overall, though, is one of these that's actually kind of the things that we easily forget, is that we can get so much interference when we're trying to connect Wi-Fi. And we're like, why isn't it working? What's not happening here? And you forget about simple things like this.
Yeah, and for the apartment or the business owner that's just sharing, essentially like he's in an apartment, right? Or he or she, there's just a ton of people all around them with all their APs. There are great free tools.
Right.
There really are free, kind of site survey tools that you can download and that will do an analysis for you of everything that's around you and what channels they're on. A lot of the tools are free, and then to take advantage of the advanced features, it's payware or whatever they call that.
Right.
But check out some of those tools, because I've downloaded several that I've been very happy with, and I don't remember any names, or I'd give them right now. But I've downloaded several and never had to pay for the extra features. No. I got what I needed, which was just a quick site survey out of the free features.
And today, the neat thing is they come with apps on phones. So you can actually go to the store and you can do that. I have one that's called Wi-Fi Analyzer on my phone that allows me to do something like that as well.
That's funny you should mention that. I'm going to pull up the one I love right now. It's Wi-Fi Sweet Spot.
Yeah.
And it's totally free and it works great.
Yeah. So at least that way you can tell whether or not there's interference that you have to worry about if you're going to bring up a wireless access, and you might even be able to see if those channels are overlapping, if you've actually brought it up, and maybe try and pick the one that's least covered by other devices out there too.
Yeah, great stuff. So let's talk about the signal and signal strength. And there's some terms here. It was so fun to research this because I see it all the time, RSSI.
Right.
And I just know it as RSSI. If you haven't figured this out about me yet in these Encore episodes, I really stink at describing acronyms. Like RIP. I really have to sit and think, what does that stand for? Because I'm just so used to it as RIP.
Right.
Is it Routing Information Protocol?
It is Routing Information Protocol.
I stink at that game. It's so great that Cisco exams aren't, what does RIP stand for? Because that would be a tough exam for me. So one of the ones that, you see all the time is RSSI, and we'll get there. But let's back up. There's actually one EIRP that you might run across. And what this stands for is the effective isotropic radiated power. And this is referring to the strength of that signal.
Right.
I mean, the strength of that signal beaming out of that access point, that is a hugely important factor here. And one of the things that we know the wireless LAN controller can do for us, Ronnie, is it can dynamically adjust the power output of these dumb APs. Remember, we call them thin or lightweight access points that the wireless LAN controller is in charge of. So the EIRP is that effective power of these devices. And what happens is, just like we have attenuation in the copper world, where the strength of the signal is weakening just naturally, we have something happening, of course, with the radio frequency approach in Wi-Fi, and that's called free space path loss. And that's just gonna happen. So we've all seen situations where a medical filing cabinet is just wreaking havoc with someone's Wi-Fi reception. One of the most interesting ones I ever saw, and that was a friend of mine called me up. Santa Jack is his name. He's this famous Santa Claus from the Tampa Bay area. He just passed away not too long ago, sadly, but he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, I need your help. My Wi-Fi is not working." And you know what it was? He had relocated his computer behind a wall that had chicken wire inside it.
Faraday cage.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie. Yeah, so there was that chicken wire in the wall. I guess that was used commonly in construction for a while.
Yeah, some type of mesh,
Yeah, and that was it. That wire mesh inside that wall. So we just knocked down the wall. He was good at construction, Santa Jack. Yeah. So that's the interference by that object. Human beings aren't good for conducting Wi-Fi either, by the way, but we're talking, nothing in the way. There's still going to be that free space path loss as that signal is moving out. Now, the RSSI, received signal strength indicator, that is our analysis out there at the client of, okay, how great are they receiving that signal? And it is a simple 0, which means they're not getting it at all, to 255 value, which means they're getting a great strength. Now, there is their sensitivity level. When you're talking about the sensitivity level of a client, that is talking about, Ronnie, how susceptible it is to interference, to noise. More modern clients for wireless are much more tolerant and can do fancy steps to clean up the signal, if you will, and understand it better. Now, this can be accurately measured, and I want you to know this one too. It's the SNR, the signal to noise ratio. This is, okay, how noisy can the environment be for the signals they're picking up, and they still be able to give the client the Wi-Fi performance that the client would expect. Yeah, so really interesting values.
Yeah, the SNR, the weird thing is we know it in the audio world as decibels is what happens. So for those of you that ever attended a concert, right, the louder the concert is, the less likely that Anthony and I are able to hear each other over an REM concert. That means the more signal to noise ratio that there is between us. So that's the same thing that happens here too. With these types of signals, you do have to worry about that. What is that receptive value that you have there? So that's actually kind of key when we start to think about these things. So all that has to be taken into consideration as we start installing this stuff. If not, we start running into more interference issues, and we blame the technology when it could be something as simple as you have a wire mesh in between you or a wall. So somebody was telling me that worked at AT&T that they went into an old house and had this wireless network put in, and it was lead paint that they had in the walls, and that was blocking. Didn't even think about that until finally said, oh yeah, it was before 1917 or whatever it was that they actually had this wall paint. It was in a historical building, and they couldn't use wireless, so they actually had to run real wires to get around that because that building would not allow for those for that wireless signal to propagate. So very interesting in how all this actually comes into play. Regardless of how strong they turned this up, it wouldn't work.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
It really is. And, this is a big deal because Wi-Fi now is expected for us as network engineers to provide to our users, and they expect it to be great. So I'm so glad that this content honestly made its way into, what was traditionally the routing and switching track. Now I really am embracing this whole, okay, this is an enterprise track of Cisco networking that we're dealing with. And you need to know the information we're covering here, really, if you're going to bill yourself as an enterprise level engineer. I'll get off my soapbox about that. Let's take a look at some of the standards. Notice I didn't go back to the old 802.11b years because this exam isn't going to ask you about anything about that, really. I mean, Cisco did a great job of not asking questions in Encore of just a historical perspective. So I listed these because I really consider these what we're going to find in use. There's 802.11n, AC, and I haven't experienced it yet, but I'm sure some of you watching have the Wi-Fi 6, the 802.11ax. Realize that the AC, the AX, those operate with the 5G, and it's really no surprise, right? The interesting one to be aware of is the 802.11n, which could actually use both of those bands in its operation. And it was the first to introduce some really cool stuff like multiple input, multiple output, which allows for this spatial multiplexing, the basically channeling together radios for more power and all this amazing technology, and that's being carried forward, and we're just getting better and better and better Wi-Fi. It'll be fun 10 years from now to look back and say, oh, do you remember when we had Wi-Fi 6? How awful that was. So this is just going to continue to get better and better and better. Well, I wanted to wrap up with just a quick kind of alert about a program that you should be aware of, and that is the Cisco Client Extensions, or CCX program. So Ronnie and I have this great idea, let's say, for a new access point. It's going to be the coolest AP ever invented. And in fact, you can order them in colors, I just decided. You could get tie-dye APs, you could get black APs if you're goth. And these access points that Ronnie and I are going to manufacture, we really want Cisco's blessing. We would love for those to be, on a list of supported by Cisco. And that's essentially what the CCX refers to. Notice it means that your Wi-Fi equipment will adhere to the latest Cisco feature set of security, performance, fast roaming, power management. Clearly, your device will integrate right into the wireless LAN controllers from Cisco and their feature set and all that. So I wanted you to be aware of this. This has to do with what can the client do in order to effectively participate inside of the Cisco ecosystem. I mentioned we manufacture APs. Probably a much better example is we manufacture wireless receivers, right? Client components. True client components is where you see this most. And notice there are historical versions. So there's version 1 of this, and version 2, and version 3, all the way up to version 5. I'm sure we'll get a version 6 as Cisco starts to introduce new functionality that the client components might need to demonstrate support for. So Ronnie, that's a look at the wonders of layer 1 when it comes to wireless LANs. Obviously, there's a lot more detail we could get into, but for us at the Encore level with wireless, I think that does it.
All right, Anthony. Well, thank you again for helping us to at least review some of these. So even if you've had a background in this, this is really going to help you as you get ready to face the exam. focusing in on the areas that are really heavily going to be covered there as well. So make sure you do take a look at the bands and take a look at, of course, at the different frequencies that we were talking about in the features as well. There are plenty of things that we can focus in on, so take the time to do so. Well, that's a great place for us to end this episode then. Signing off for IT Pro TV, I'm your host, Ronnie Wong.
And I'm Anthony Sequeira.
Stay tuned right here for more of your CCNP Encore show.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.